today is Kathleen Ridder Crampton. She is the chair of Floridians for National Popular Vote. And along with other members of the senior team, she oversees the activity of this organization, which is growing by leaps and bounds in the state of Florida. As one of the founding members of the Florida organization, Kathleen has been involved both in the state and national movement to elect the President of the United States by popular vote. Kathleen has had an astounding career, amazing. She was a senior executive with experience all across the healthcare industry, including health insurance, healthcare management, hospital management, and venture capital for healthcare companies. She's a graduate of Boston University with a BA in American History, but she didn't stop there. She has a Master's of Public Health from Harvard and an MBA in Finance from George Washington University. She is also a certified financial planner, and I have to say, after spending the last hour sitting next to her with lunch, she is also a very charming lady. So I think that we are looking forward to a very educational and interesting presentation. And with that, I give you our speaker.
I'm hearing a little feedback, but I think I'm going to move over to this side. First of all, I just have to tell you I am delighted to be here. And I want to thank everybody here in this wonderful organization, in particular Rebecca Van Horn, Manuel Sori, who helped get all of our audio to work, and Mark Cooper, with whom we have been discussing all sorts of political issues. We are both junkies, so I give you that warning in advance. I also want to thank the people who are responsible for my being here. I live in the South in Palm Beach County, and there are 4 people here who I really want to acknowledge. One, of course, is Leslie Feinberg here, who's our wonderful IT person. If you all don't know her, she's an engineer, worked on all sorts of projects that I could never figure out, but she's our IT person, and we're grateful to have her. Ann Copenhaver, who's sitting over there, who's my right hand, works with all of our folks all over the state. Who else? Michelle Levy, where are you? Who is my partner from the League of Women Voters, and I'm thrilled to have her here. And then finally, Leora Thompson, and we are thrilled to have you as well. So this is my team, and I don't do, in this kind of business that I'm in, I don't do anything. I'm just lucky enough to have great people around me, right? So these are the really good people. So we're going to talk today we're going to start talking about democracy. And the first thing I did when I heard about coming up here, I went out and I printed out this little document. And these are all the people those of you who live in Winter Park, I can hear it coming back again. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. These are all the people who you elected. And it's a huge list. And in fact, I'm going to pass it around when I finish this section, and you guys can look at it. But let me ask you a question. How did Phil Anderson become the mayor of your city or town? I don't know what it is.
Popular vote.
Popular vote. That is correct. Can you define that for us?
People voted.
People voted, but what happened? He got the most votes. He got more votes than everybody else. So if you look through this list, right, and it's long. For example, I even identified a couple of them. Let's see if I can find them. One, for example, is, here we go, is Anna Escamami. How did she get elected? Popular vote, right? How about our governor? Popular vote, right? How about Marco Rubio? Popular vote. Whose names are on here who were not elected by popular vote?
No president.
the President of the United States and the Vice President. Seems pretty amazing, doesn't it? I mean, think about it. Everybody essentially from dog catcher to, governor to senator is elected by popular vote, with one notable exception, the President of the United States. So let's talk a little bit about that. Wait a minute, I have to get my toy. Hold on. Why don't you pass that around so people can see that I'm not nuts? So how is it? Take a look at the number of people, though, that you all elect. And this is just Winter Park. Huge. Millions of people participate in our government to make, the street lights work. That is a most amazing phenomenon. Think about it. The street lights work. They don't work these days in Maripol. Right? Maripol in Ukraine, right? Okay. So how did we get here? Here is the most important sentence, and it basically, I'll get out of the way so you don't see it here. It's the most important sentence, and it's in this little book. This is the U.S. Constitution. Anybody wants to see it? I brought 2 copies so you can see where it is. I'm going to read it because it's really important. Each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislature may direct a number of electors equal to the whole number of senators and representatives to which the state may be entitled in the Congress. Got it? So who has the plenary authority to make decisions about voting in Florida? You may not like it, but it's the truth. Who? No. Who makes the decision?
State Congress.
Read the sentence. The legislature.
And they're not knowledgeable.
Well, I won't make a comment. I won't make a comment on that. So what do we end up with? Now, I'm sorry this map is a little hard to read. But if you look at this, those are the number of each state, the number of electors in each state. And I'm just looking to see, it did get changed. Florida, as you know, used to have 29. How many do we have now? 30. 30, that's because there's more of us than there were before. So we now have 1, and in order to win, how many votes do you need? 270, exactly. So let's move on here for a minute. So how have we done? If you look carefully, you will see that 5 of the 47 presidents have been what I call minority presidents. And everybody in this room is going to remember 2000, right? And the problems with George Bush and Al Gore. George Bush ultimately won. And the same issue, well, it was slightly different with Donald Trump over Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton won by 7 million more votes than, I'm sorry.
3 million.
Exactly. Got it? Let me just say it the right way. Hillary had 3 million more, and Donald Trump ended up winning because of the electoral college. Right. So, but there's other problems that this produces. What is the problem? How many of you have ever heard of something called winner take all? Anybody know what winner take all is? These are bills that have been passed in many of the states, in 48 states. Not all, by the way. Maine and Nebraska do it differently. Bet most of you didn't know that. And winner take all, which means, and these bills were passed in the mid-1800s, and there is nothing in the Constitution about winner take all. These are things, this is a bill, and if anyone's interested, I'll tell you the history of how this came about. It's all Thomas Jefferson's fault, by the way. But the key is state legislatures can enact election reform laws such as national popular vote. So hold that thought when we go to the next slide. So how does this work? Pretend we have a state that has 20 electoral votes. And let's say the candidate for president gets 60% of the vote. He or she gets 100% of the electoral votes. Got it? Same thing. If the candidate gets 51%, he or she gets 100% or 20 electoral votes. And if the candidate gets who wins by plurality at 40% of the vote, they still get 100%. You see what happens? So it amplifies the win through the use of winner take all. It also does some other things. And we're going to go through each of these in a bit more detail. Presidential candidates campaign only in swing or battleground states. I'm going to show you some numbers around that. Not every vote is equal. If you think your vote here in Florida or my vote here in Florida is as valuable as a vote in Wyoming, no, wrong. Because if you care about that, move to Wyoming, because your vote is a lot more valuable. You're going to see some numbers on that. Small states are at a disadvantage. If you talk to people around this, say, oh, we've got to save the Electoral College because it's good for small states. Not true. Whoops, sorry. Voter turnout in reliably red states and reliably blue states is lower than in swing states. If it's reliably red or reliably blue, you might not vote. Does it count? We'll talk a little bit more about that. And candidates focus on issues important to voters in swing states and not to voters in all states. So let's look at this a little bit more. So in 2020, there were just 12 battleground states or swing states. That's the same thing, battleground and swing. And these are the number of presidential campaign events. So take a look. What's really impressive about this is not the ones that are colored, but look at all the guys who, as far as nobody cared what they thought. Look at California. California is the seventh largest, if it were a country, it'd be the 7th largest country in the world. Look at it, not one visit. Now, these are campaign visits during the campaign after the primaries, got it? And it doesn't include trips to raise money. These are straight up campaign visits. But look at that. And then you look, now of course we're a battleground state, so we don't notice that nobody's come here because they do. We're very important, we're hugely important. But take a look at all these other, look at well, if I had this slide up from 2016, Georgia wouldn't be here. So they changed, by the way. And Ohio, which is where I used to live, right there with its 13, that's going red. It won't be a battleground state. Nobody's going to go visit them, right? So let's move on. So most states are ignored. These are all states that are ignored. Vermont, which is Democratic. Texas, which is Republican. California, which is Democratic. West Virginia, which is Republican. So some people say, wait a minute, small states, really important for small states. Well, take a look at, whoops, sorry. Pushed the wrong button. Let's take a look at this. Little Wisconsin, this is 2016, had 10 electoral votes. And these are 8 states with 24. They had 1 visit. Here they had 40. Need I say more, right? So look at this one. This goes to the issue of where is it more valuable. So let's start with Florida. We have in round numbers 21 million people. We now, oh my goodness, I didn't change this. I apologize. That should say 30, should not say 29. I thought I caught them all. If you look over here, these states all have only a population of 8 million. And what do they have? 29. Right? Point made. So let's talk about turnout. In battleground states, you have a 67% turnout. By the way, my personal opinion, that's still appallingly low. I'm sorry that 67%, but in spectator states, that's the other word for reliably, for 60%. I voted. It's not going to make any difference. I mean, have you ever heard people say that? That's right. So, and then even more importantly, is that in spectator states, they don't get as much federal funding for programs. So for example, California, I'll never forget, I used to think about this, California during those terrible fires in 2020, they got almost no federal help. Why? Because government didn't care about their vote. The president didn't care about their vote. Texas got few federal dollars for the horrific hurricanes, again the same thing. And even in Florida, all of a sudden Obama flies to the panhandle, right? I mean, I'd like to tell you it's different, but it isn't. Neither reliably blue nor red states receive much federal attention. It just is what it is. And having a president who's elected by a minority of voters is probably not good. Now, I'm going to just do a little segue here because you all live in something that's very important. We're talking about this at lunch. And that is the I-4 corridor. And what makes the I-4 corridor so important? Anybody here? Can you figure it out? You don't get to say anything.
Purple.
It's purple, that's right. And so George Bush, as you recall, was a minority president coming out of the 2000 election. And he wanted to be a majority. And so he came to Florida. And Florida is really easy to consider politically. If you're looking for Republicans, you go north, and if you're looking for Democrats, you go south, and where is the purple? Right in the middle. And they did a lot of polling to find out what was important to the people who lived here. And what they discovered was that those on Medicare were unhappy with the drug coverage. Remember? And so George Bush said, if I'm elected for a second term, I will go ahead and increase the drug benefit, and that's how we got a vastly enhanced entitlement for drug benefit prior to George Bush being elected. And what do you know? He was elected in 2004. That's a perfect example of where a small group of people, but it worked out for us, right? Right? Looks good to us. But maybe there are people up in Washington State, or in Minnesota, or in Maine, or in Kansas who think that there are other things that are more important. Farm subsidies or whatever, right? Interesting that you have, the implications of this business of swing states. Moving right along, oh yes. So then you say, well, what did the framers want? How did this thing happen? And if you look carefully, what you'll discover is that the framers voted 30 times, this is Philadelphia, by the way, 30 times over 22 days to try and figure out how the president should be elected. Of those votes, by the way, none of them included winner take all, just as an aside. And at the end, they decided to leave it up to the states. Now, here's my take on what really happened. They voted 30 times. They've been there for, I can't remember, 8 or 9 months. It's the middle of July. It's Philadelphia. Whereas the air conditioning just isn't working terribly well back in the 18th century. And I can see it now. Somebody raised their hand and said, we can't figure this thing out. Why don't we let the states do it instead? And what do you think everybody said? Great idea. We're out of here. And I will tell you, there are a lot of, I'd like to say I was clever. I'm not. There are a lot of other people who think that that's exactly what happened. And there's a huge number. There have been like 700 different bills to try and address this issue. It's probably the area where there is less agreement that this is the way to proceed going forward. I always think of it really as the appendix, right? It was useful once upon a time, but perhaps not so much anymore. Anyway, moving ahead. So how should we elect the president? I think one person, one vote. My guess is, I'm looking around the table, there are a bunch of other people here who probably think that's the right thing too. So, how does national popular vote work? It's an agreement, an interstate compact. Do you know there are hundreds of interstate compacts? They're usually around issues like sharing information about driver's licenses between states, right? Or they're around boundaries or transportation issues and stuff. So this is designed as an interstate compact. And it guarantees the U.S. presidency to the candidate who receives the most popular votes in all 50 states and D.C. combined. This is the most important sentence. If you don't remember anything out of today, remember this. We are asking states to replace their winner-take-all laws with the national popular vote interstate compact. Do you see what we're doing? This is a state-based effort. The compact only goes into effect when 270 electoral votes have enacted the law. And it works within the Constitution, the Electoral College. It does not replace it. So, let's go right to the example. Example. Under this, if Florida votes for Trump, but all 50 states vote for Biden, right? Then Biden gets Florida's electoral votes. Does that make sense? I'm going to stop here because it's a kind of it's a aha moment for people. Instead of it being, do you see? It doesn't make sense. Okay. Right now, the state the state sends the electors, or their votes, based on who wins in the state. Got it? What we're proposing is that the state says, we're not going to do it anymore based on who wins in our state. We're going to look at who wins overall in all 50 states. Does that make sense? I'm stopping again.
Yeah.
Yes, to whom does it not make sense? Trust me, I've done this a fair amount. They're very hard for people to get this concept. We'll come back. NPV has been signed by 15 states already and the District of Columbia, which means that we have 195 electoral votes already. And how many more do you need? Someone who's quick with math, I know the answer. 75. We're very close.
Can you name the states that are?
We're going right there. Give me a couple more slides. National popular vote would guarantee the presidency to the candidate who receives the most votes in 50 states. Every vote will count, right? You won't have people saying, I'm not going to vote because I don't vote, because my vote doesn't count. Every vote will matter in every state, regardless of what state you live in. So your vote now will count as much as someone in Wyoming. Whoops. Oh dear, sorry about that. It goes into effect when the states with 270 have been committed, only 75 more are needed. So it is constitutionally conservative because the authority rests with the states. A lot of people would like to get this passed nationally. By the way, just in case you're interested, it almost got passed in 1970. Almost, it passed. It passed the House, it didn't make it through the Senate. And what do you think prevented it from getting through the Senate?
Filibuster.
Filibuster. Exactly right. Does not alter the Constitution of the United States. That's it, just what you saw, that's it. That's it, nothing else has to change. Doesn't violate the Constitution, there's no prohibition. In fact, quite the opposite, the Supreme Court has reaffirmed that the states have the plenary authority around choosing their electors. Retains the Electoral College, wouldn't work without the Electoral College. Retains state control of elections, that's the conservative, and has been approved by the participating states. So let's go to your question here. Is that clear? Can you guys see that clearly? Yes? Green states are states that have passed it. California, Washington, Oregon, Hawaii, can't see from here, I need my glasses, Illinois, Colorado, New Mexico, New York, you can see those are the green and those are the 15 states plus District of Columbia that have passed it. Those in orange, the state legislature have passed NPV in one chamber, okay? So it's gone through the House or it's gone through their Senate. Blue is that it's been, yellow is Nevada. We thought we were going to have that passed. It passed in the House and Senate in Nevada. But the problem? The casino owners went to the governor and said, if we're not a swing state anymore, nobody's going to come and campaign in our state. And we want to fill our beds in our casinos. Need I say more, right? Disappointing. And then blue is that the bills have been heard in one chamber. And unfortunately down here in the gray is that the bills have been filed, and we'll get to that in the next slide. But there's been no hearing. Yes, of course, that's right. I mean, right. The bills have been filed, just so you know, in Joseph Geller and your very own Senator Torres. I hope you all know him. Both of them have been wonderful. Originally filed in Florida by Senator Hill, and others have co-sponsored the bills, but no Republicans to date. So I'm going to say thank you and open it up for questions. Now, we do have the quiz. How many of you got a chance to take a look at the quiz? Thank you for having us do that. Take a look at the quiz, and I'm going to ask people how many people, did anyone look at this or not really? They did, okay, so we'll go through it. The way states direct their electors to vote for the president or vice president is mandated by the Constitution. False. National Popular Vote Interstate Compact is an agreement among states to award all their electoral votes to the president who wins the most votes in all 50 states. True. States can leave the compact whenever they like. False. It's in there. By the way, it's 6 months. Essentially from, I think it's July 15th to January 15th, something like that.
But they can rescind it.
They can rescind it, but not in that period.
No. Oh.
Do you see what I'm saying?
July through January?
July through January of the election year. Got it? So you're either playing by these rules before or you're playing, or you're not. But you can't change your mind in the middle of a campaign. The president will be elected when all 50 states have passed the legislation. False. Why? Right, you only need 270. Right. The League of Women Voters adopted a position to elect the president by national as a result of the 2016 election. False. They were very influential in 1970 when it almost got passed. If the electoral votes were allocated on a per capita basis evenly across the states, Florida would have 97 electoral votes and not 29. Yeah, isn't that amazing? The electoral system was designed to ensure small and rural states have as big voice and larger and more urban states. False. Listen, one thing that a lot of people say, well, the framers really cared about the problem of urban versus rural. And I'm like, really? Back in 1776, 95% of the US population were rural. The last thing they were thinking about was the problem between urban and rural. That's a fiction that's been created recently. Democrats stand to gain the most from national popular vote, which is why few Republicans support it. Yeah, what do we have for that? No, it's false. Because, you know, maybe you remember they do swing right now. It's hard to believe that there might be a swing. But think about it. Illinois, for example, which was one of the first states to pass it, they were all Republicans back, you know, a number of years ago. So 94% of the candidates, 94% of candidate events were held in 12 so-called swing states. True. And swing states receive more federal grants, Superfund liability exemptions, and other types of federal largesse than non-swing states. So, questions, comments, agreement, disagreement? Sir?
So where does the electoral college fit into this?
Because we still use the same structure for reporting.
For what purpose? If it's just a question of who got the most votes, why don't they just go to, this is the winner, he or she got the most?
Right. It's because you couldn't get it through Congress.
What difference would it make?
You could go ahead and just eliminate the electoral college. But that would require a change in the Constitution. That would require a change in the Constitution. That's a big deal. You have to get both houses of the House and Senate to pass it. And then you have to get, I think, 3/4 of the states.
38 states.
But
38 states.
it essentially makes the electoral college a rubber stamp, correct, for whatever the popular vote?
Well, yes, but not really, because the states can pull out. They could change their mind. They could go to something else.
But only if they're a majority.
Excuse me?
But only if they are a majority of the states.
Yes, you would, well, if let's say we get, I'm making this up, let's say we get 280 let's say we get 280 electoral votes, right? And let's say California drops out. Then, you know, you can still vote that way, but they won't be dominant.
My concern is we are rather fragile already, and I don't know if we can avoid a split up. Half the country thinks the election was stolen, the other half doesn't, and neither of them are changing their positions. So if we, by the agreement of a 270
Right.
electoral vote majority, force that will on the rest of them, it does not bode well.
Well, there'll certainly be suits. I mean, there'll be people who will bring suits, but the Supreme Court will generally say, and has said, no, the states get to make their own mind up about this issue. Ann?
I would say to both of those that we need to consider the Electoral College is already a rubber stamp for the states. Why is that? Because that's what the Constitution says. So whether they're a rubber stamp for winner take all or a rubber stamp for another choice of the election. Do you see what I'm saying, Rob? Does that make sense? That in essence, that was the issue over which Mike Pence was saying,
Right.
I have to certify what the state said. This is no different than that. No different than that.
Yeah.
Kathleen, did you
Go ahead, Michelle.
Can you explain why it is so important that this process avoids the necessity of an amendment to the Constitution?
Well, it's important because we only need, oh, jeez. I have to be careful where I walk. Yes, because it's close. 75, we only need a bunch more states, and I have a list of states that are ripe to pass it. Ready? Arizona, Michigan, Virginia. We almost got Virginia. Nevada, North Carolina, Minnesota, and Georgia are the states that are the ripest for passing it. Did that answer your question?
Well, the process to go through an amendment is so difficult. I mean, we had so few amendments in the existence of
our country that I think that this process is just so much easier than having to go
That's right.
through the process of
That's right.
amendment.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Let me also mention, many of you may have forgotten this because none of us were alive back then, but remember how senators used to be elected? Anybody know? Legislature. And what happened was that states started by making their decision themselves and saying we're going to do it by popular vote within our state. That's how we're going to choose senators. And after, half of the country had done that, I think it was 1912, they finally moved to popular vote for senators.
Why did we do the winner take all? Why didn't we do it proportional?
That's a really good question. And
Would you repeat it?
yes, why do we have winner take all? All right, so now you're going to have to put on your thinking caps and jump back to the election of, let me get this right, 1796. Okay? And the two people who were running, remember George Washington was our first president, right? And we had him for two. And so the next two people up, one was John Adams and the other was Thomas Jefferson, right? And it turned out, and the Electoral College was functioning, and it turned out that Adams won. He got more votes. And Thomas Jefferson went back to Virginia, and he was not a happy camper. And what he noticed, and I don't have these numbers exactly right, but the point's right. Let's say they had 15 electoral votes in Virginia. Virginia, I think, was the largest geographically the largest state in the Union at that point. But they split their vote. So it turned out that Thomas Jefferson, out of the 15, got 8, but 7 electoral votes went to John Adams, right? Well, Thomas Jefferson was not happy about this at all, so he went and schmoozed with the House of, what's it called? Burgess. It's called the Burgess House, I think is what it's called. What's it called?
House of Burgesses.
That's it, House of Burgesses in Virginia, and said, listen, guys, if you will pass this thing, actually back then it was called the general ticket, which is winner take all, I'll go ahead, then I can become president, and I will give you guys a lot of, money and favors, etc. And so you know what they did? They passed it. And so in 1800, again, it was John Adams versus, I'm sorry, it was Burr. That's correct. Burr versus Thomas Jefferson, but he won because he got all 15 electoral votes. And so what happened was some of the states started to watch this. Now, who do you think thought this was a great idea? There's a group of people whose name never appears in this and who are so important. Who is that who thought this was a great idea?
Justices?
No, it's actually a group of people. Ready? The parties. Right? The political parties. And of course, there were no political parties initially. Well, there were Federalists. But the parties thought it was great. And so by the time the last state to enact winner take all was, ready? Florida. They passed it in 1869. So it was, and as I say, 2 states don't do it. Maine and Nebraska. And they have a more complicated system. It isn't worth talking. In fact, Maine is going to abandon it and is going to pass, oh, they should have been on my list too. Maine is going to pass it. It's been through their House and Senate several times and they'll pass it. Probably, if not this year, next year. Oh, wait a minute, who's back here? Yeah.
So, well, you know, we being citizens of this country have always been under the illusion that we were founded as a democracy, and the process over the centuries now has been to try to actually turn it into a democracy.
Yeah.
And 15 presidents, 3 of whom were re-elected, were elected with less than 50% of the vote.
Yes, right.
People remember Clinton. He didn't win 50%.
Right.
Anyway.
They want what's called a plurality.
Right, a plurality. And electors were not chosen until, by popular vote until 1872, I think. The 2 parties are vested in a duopoly.
That's correct.
And spend, you know, a fortune to ensure that nobody else can participate. You know, my bigger issue is, honestly, that near 40% of eligible voters in this country have decided that they're not vested in the system at all and don't vote. That would take care of a lot of the issues that we have. But 40%, you know, 4 out of 10 people don't vote.
I know.
That's not sustainable for the kind of democracy that you're
That's
talking
correct. But part of that is driven by the fact that they are reliably red or reliably blue and nobody goes to visit them, and because the issues are out on the edge. Another, I think, result of moving towards national popular vote would be that the candidates would all of a sudden have to move towards the middle and find issues on which there was common ground rather than be way out on the edge.
Well, you could argue that the primary system, as it has evolved, ensures that. I mean, they say that
Yes.
less than 40 seats
Yes, are competitive.
are competitive. That's less than 10% are
Let me
competitive.
just tell you, there is a lady sitting over here. Michelle, raise your hand. We almost passed open primaries here in Florida. Almost. We had, what, 57% of the vote? And all we needed was 60. We're not going to go into why that happened. But my goodness, I agree totally with you.
Any others?
Help me to understand what the two major political parties, how do they stand on this? I think I know.
Well, yeah.
Well, what is their logic or reasoning?
Well, to be honest, right now, it's been politicized.
Yes.
But I have the quote and I have the video of Donald Trump actually saying that he thinks that national popular vote makes more sense. And then he adds, and if I had the opportunity to run, I would run differently. Remember when I don't know if you remember, right after he was nominated, he said to California or something, he said, California, I'm coming out to campaign in your state. And I remember all the politicians went, oh no, you're not. You're not wasting money in California because you're never going to win it anyway. So, you know, there are a lot of things we could do. What about redistricting? That's another thing we could do. So, anyway, this is my spiel. There we go.
Last question. I noticed in looking at the map, the green states,
Yes.
mostly Democratic.
Yes, that's correct.
And is that an issue to
It
consider?
is an issue, and Republicans will say, well, what Republicans will say to me, if I'm in a Republican room, well, this is a terrible idea. We never get elected.
Well, maybe
And I'm
maybe they're right.
Well, they are right.
Yeah.
But then it would force them to perhaps move away from the issues on the right. By the way, you can say this to those on the left as well, and say you got to start moving towards the middle and dealing with issues that people care about, rather than speaking to a small minority out here and a small minority out here.
One other question. You know, I'm okay with new pronouns and different genders and all this that's going on, okay? But why change something that we've been doing so long?
Because there are a lot of things to get changed, and Mrs. Crampton here thinks, along with a lot of other people, I'm not alone, by the way. You know, 15 states have passed this thing. There's a national organization. There are people all over the United States. Once a month, we meet on a Zoom call, and we talk about what's happening in all the other states. There are a lot of people, and the reason is we can actually see maybe getting this passed. I'm hoping before I go. But you know, there are a lot of, I think open primary is an important issue. I think redistricting is an important issue. You know, give me a list. So the answer is, we can see the end. We can see the end of the tunnel, and it's only 75 electoral votes away.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Well, thank you. A lot of fun. I really appreciate it. Oh, and if you're interested, you know, let us know. There is a website. Oh my God, I didn't even talk about it. Floridians for National Popular Vote. There it is. Oh, there it is, right there. And you can go on that, and you'll see all sorts of stuff. And you can volunteer. We have 3-4 people here who are fabulous. Talk to them. They'll get you involved, and you can come play. Thank you very, very, very much.
Thank you. Fascinating. One of the reasons, that talk is one of the reasons why we are proud to call our organization a fitness club for the mind. And that is something that we all needed. I thank you all for coming. I hope you enjoyed the lunch. I hope you enjoyed the talk. Thanks to George for the food, and thanks to our volunteers for serving it. Everybody, please drive safely, and we'll see you at the next event, which is the musicale that was discussed, and you'll be getting an email about it.